Those who are analysts, though I don't know what it takes to become an analyst. Those who are analysts who have always been projecting the KwaZulu-Natal as divided, as pieces that would be taken by anyone, would draw a conclusion from this PGC that we still remain an ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, which debate and emerge as a collective. I have no doubt in my mind that as we rise from this PGC, we can all agree that we are more wiser than we were when we met here 2 days ago, and therefore ready to advance our policy propositions as we go to the National Policy Conference. Emerging from this PGC is a contingent of cadres and activists prepared to confront perennial challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. As asserted by President Jacob Zuma, the enemy continues to live and fight irrespective of whether or not we recognize its permanent presence. We want to state without any hesitation that today in our country, there is a convergence of forces who share a common short-term goal, which is to remove President Zuma and eventually the ANC from power, but do not share a common objective on what would happen in the aftermath. It is a short-term objective. They are united only on that, but they've got no common agenda after that. That is what makes these forces to be even more dangerous, illogical, and unreliable. Placing any trust on them is a very serious risk for the future of our people and that of generations to come. Therefore, whether the court would have ruled in any way, ours in KwaZulu-Natal is that we remain with confidence to the president of the ANC. Therefore, being a member and a cadre of the movement requires people who are constantly engaged in a study of the revolution, factors that influence it, and the role of revolutionaries to shape it in the best interest of our revolutionary cause. The journey does not end here. As we rise from this PGC, we need to pay sufficient attention to the state of our organization and avoid temptation of allowing our individual conduct and desires to tarnish the image and the standing of the ANC. As we said when we started this PGC, the ANC is a movement and a parliament of the people. It exists solely to serve the people of South Africa. Its continued existence is dependent on the trust that people continues to bestow on it. As Moses Kotane once said, and I quote, "The revolution is about the people, and the people can be stolen," close quote. Therefore, we must at all times refuse to project the people movement through our own conduct and articulation as a movement that is self-serving. We should also not fall prey into fallacy of thinking that the ANC is immune from natural processes that characterizes any society. All societies do not consist of things, but of processes that bring things into and out of being. This is the dialectical relationship between the cause and effect in the society. The ANC come into being as the result of the struggle of the people. If because of our conduct, people come to the determination, wittingly or unwittingly, that their struggle can be best pursued outside the ANC will become irrelevant and eventually cease to exist. When the ANC ceases to exist, the gains of the revolution will be reversed, and the future generation will correctly put the entire blame on our shoulders. By that point, people would have been stolen. The motive forces of the National Democratic Revolution remains the working class, rural poor, the middle strata, who stands to benefit from the continuing struggle to build a national democratic society. These forces are characterized as Africans in particular and black in general. As a consequence, all our actions must be directed to the liberation of this very important segment of the society. As we continue to navigate through the difficult times that faces our movement and the revolution, we must never lose hope, even in the face of complex circumstances and difficult moments. The ANC president, on the first day of this PGC, took us into memory lane about what it means to be a cadre of the movement. The articulation by President is in line with the teachings of Chairman Mao Zedong that, and I quote, "What is correctly inevitable develops in the course of the struggle with what is wrong. The true, the good, and the beautiful always exist by contrast to the false, the evil, and the ugly, and grow in struggle with them. As soon as something erroneous is rejected, a particular truth accepted by mankind, a new truth begins to struggle with the new errors. Such struggle will never end." Close quote. As we prosecute the people's struggle under the ever-changing conditions, we must continue to sharpen our tools of analysis so that we are able to distinguish the trees from the woods, weed from fragrant flowers, and avoid accrediting the relative with the features of the absolute. This we will do and succeed in doing if we keep the African National Congress rooted among the masses of our people. There must be no difference between the ANC and the masses of our people, both in thinking and articulation of our aspirations. Whatever we say must resonate with the people. As we surge forward with the struggle for radical economic transformation, we must fully appreciate the fact that we pursue a struggle under conditions characterized by antagonistic contradictions at play. As observed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the Communist Manifesto, and I quote, "The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of the class struggle. The oppressed and the oppressor stood in constant opposite to one another, carried on an uninterrupted, now hidden, now open fight that each time ended either in a revolutionary reconstruction of a society at large, in the common ruin of the contending classes." Close quote. While appreciating this fundamental reality in South Africa, the national question became the primary contradiction to be resolved toward an attainment of a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, united and prosperous society. This has always been understood not as the postponement of the class struggle, but instead the interconnectedness of the class struggle and the resolution of the national question. 23 years into democracy, the uninterrupted battle between the contending classes in South Africa is now an open fight. The oppressor is uncomfortable with the project of radical economic transformation, which is an immediate agenda and the plight of the oppressed class as represented by the ANC. This is a permanent war which President Jacob Zuma amply referred to it during his address to this PGC. It is an open fight. Those who own means of production, those who are within the capitalist, who enjoy capitalism, and those who are living in poor conditions. Because of this unending and uninterrupted battle, an economic warfare has been unleashed against the ANC and its government. Hence, our economy has been put into junk status by rating agencies. We understand this to be an economic warfare because the decisions to downgrade the economy of our country were taken not on the basis of soundness of our economic policies, but on political consideration after the president exercised his constitutional prerogative to reconstitute the cabinet. In this regard, it must be clear, sovereignty of South Africa remains important. The struggle to liberate our people from bondages of socio-economic oppression, which remains as the legacy of oppression, needs to continue. As we are raising this point, so that as revolutionaries, we are able to distinguish the challenges of our own making and those brought to us by objective environment, even if they coincide with our own internal subjective dynamics, impacting upon the pace of change. The reality is that the enemy does not only want to remove President Zuma, but at the end they want to remove even the ANC. They will project him as the main problem. The problem we are facing in South Africa is the high level of unemployment of our people, is the high level of poverty. You can remove President Zuma today, poverty will still be there. In fact, those who want him removed, they want to perpetuate the status quo that is prevailing today. How are we then expected to understand the sudden desire by some within the Congress movement to cooperate with the counter-revolution? As revolution teaches us, a conscience of a person is not determined by a function of his mind or her mind, but by his or her surrounding objective conditions. As President Zuma said, a person does not live as he thinks, but rather think as he lives. Indeed, because of the success of the revolution, there are some in the movement who have recorded rapid growth in life, either as a result of policies of our democratic movement, in particular the BEE, or were deliberately and purposefully co-opted by the white monopoly capital so that it appears to be concerned with African people, while the intention is to serve its agenda. It is these comrades today who have sponsored brevity to tell us that there is no white monopoly capital and that the agenda for radical economic transformation is a reckless agenda that will upset the private sector. It is time we distinguish whether, as the ANC, we will stand on the side of the motive forces of our revolution or we stand to please the private capital. The creeping danger of conformism need to be confronted. Clearly, there are those who see nothing wrong with the current economic status quo, and they have piggybacked on subjective challenges to further their own ambitions. For them, any change in the structure of the economy represents adventurism and is reckless. In this context, the pursuit of radical economic transformation should simultaneously include fighting corruption. As revolutionaries, we should ensure that we confront and deal with both those who resist radical economic transformation, while at the same time ensure that we fight corruption. Because the good program of radical economic transformation will be sabotaged if it gets any element of corruption. It is easy for those who occupy the media to tell us that no, this project is wrong because it is corrupt, while the project for us is correct. Both resisting radical economic transformation as well as corruption need to be confronted and uprooted from the movement and any sphere of government. We've decided to labor on this point so that we all have a common understanding of the real challenge challenges that are facing today, so that we don't fall prey into the agenda sold to us by the enemy of the revolution. As we move to the policy conference, we must buttress the project of radical economic transformation with decisiveness and policy position that will move the economy from the hands of the few white males to the masses of our people. We need to move with speed to economically empower the majority of our country, the Africans in particular. In the political overview, we lifted up some key policy proposals that we needed to advance. It is impressive that some of those have become the resolutions of this PGC. Among those the PGC have agreed on, we are unanimous in our view that there can be no progress without a strong and a united ANC. We are firm and unanimous on the importance of land redistribution, and in that regard, we are firm on land expropriation without compensation. As an approach to achieve this, we are going to engage that the ANC should lobby all African parties in parliament to review the constitution of the country. If that fails, we can thereafter go for a referendum. We are firm on our view that free and quality education up to the first degree is the correct way that leads to skills revolution and build human capital needed for a developmental state. We are firm on our position that the renewal of the National Liberation Movement, the ANC, is not an option, but a revolutionary imperative for continued survival of the movement. We are firm and unanimous that as part of strengthening the head office of the ANC, we will advocate, in addition to other NEC members who are full-time, that there should be a review of the Constitution to accommodate the existence of two deputy secretaries, one responsible for monitoring, evaluation, and research, and another one responsible for organizational building and campaigns. We are committing ourselves to rise above parochial provincial interest if anything of them compromises unity of the ANC. For that matter, as the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, we are going to intensify the engagement with other provinces on the issue of the leadership of the ANC, so that the 55th conference of the ANC does not produce the leadership which will be in one slate, but will ensure that we elect the leadership coming from all sides proposed by members of the ANC. As the PGC, we are unanimous on principles that should inform the selection and election of the leadership. Revolutionaries are not born, but constructed by the struggle of our people, not by the position they hold in the revolution. As KwaZulu-Natal, We do not subscribe to the notion that the election of the deputy president implies that that comrade is automatically ordained to be a successor to the incumbent. If it was so, there would have been no need for elections. In addition, we understand that only as an unwritten principle of the movement. But in addition to such unwritten tradition, the leadership elections should be driven by the strategic task of the government and the quality of available pool of leadership rather than a supposedly natural selection due to the current leadership position. The assertion that a deputy is an inherent successor, therefore, is not the only principle that defines the election of the leadership. We reiterate the principles that we have adopted from yesterday, that the leadership that we will elect will be those that will prioritize unity of the movement. The leadership that we will elect will be the leadership that will fight factionalism and corruption in all structures without being selective. But moreover, the leadership that we will elect will be one that will be prepared to advance radical economic transformation, including expropriation of land with no compensation, including industrialization in South Africa. It is for that we must be principled in our engagement as we go to the national conference. The leadership must be chosen on the strength of its qualities and not only the position they hold. I would like to express our revolutionary gratitude to the branches of the ANC, the leagues, and everyone who participated in this conference. But more than that, we thank also the media. We've seen that there has been a contingent of the media which attended our conference and participated in covering the events that were taking place, and we are grateful and we want to thank them for that. All of us made a profound statement that unity of the ANC is sacrosanct. I know that all of us are committed to ensure that this undertaking does not become an empty statement, and therefore all of us need to work, intensify unity within structures of the organization. On our collective shoulders lies a heavy obligation to ensure that the future generation does not pass a judgment on us as contingent of activists who betray the undertaking we sign upon joining the ANC. Once again, history and reality impose a duty on all of us as revolutionaries to maintain a dynamic contact with the masses of our people. And thus, in this, the year of Olivo Reginald Tambo, let us make the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal united. Let us, as KwaZulu-Natal, deepen unity of the movement. The struggle continue. Amandla! Mandla! Long live ANC, long live. Comrades, this PGC, with great success it had, is now adjourned. Siyabonga.
Oh, good.